Michael at the Pentagon today is out the door. This is a fascinating story, and if you listen to this program, you heard this one coming after the Secretary of War, as President Trump likes to call him, Pete Hegseth, laid down a marker for the Pentagon press corps right up to and until signing off on a piece of paper mandating new regulations in the way the press cover the Pentagon here. It's not going over well with anyone. Well, maybe except OAN. But let me speak about our own shop here. Bloomberg News, along with most every other national news shop, including Fox News, Newsmax, the Washington Times, some of the conservative outlets, along with all the others, the three-letter networks, the Washington Post, New York Times, and so on, the five major TV networks say they will refuse to sign the new reporting limits set out by the defense secretary, and they've been given a couple of weeks to do so. We saw this coming in slow motion. A Bloomberg News statement reads, the Pentagon's new policy on press access restricts the sort of standard news gathering essential in any democracy. We will continue to uphold the values of an independent free press and rigorously report on the U.S. government, military, and matters of public interest. Following the Hegseth criteria endorsed by President Trump. So what's going on right now at the Pentagon is a bunch of journalists and their support crew dismantling computer systems, breaking down furniture, and getting out of the building. At some point, they'll have to turn in their credentials as well. Yeah. The process of covering the Pentagon is about to change dramatically, and I'll be very curious to see what happens to the leaks coming out of the Pentagon. With one news organization, this OAN, they're going to be the only ones in there acting almost like a state TV network. And this is where we start our conversation with our political panel. Bloomberg Politics contributors Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis are with us. Rick is our Republican strategist partner at Stone Court Capital, and Jeannie is our Democratic analyst, democracy visiting fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center. What do you think about this, Jeannie? Not so much the protocol, but the response to see Fox News, the Washington Times, and other conservative outlets, with the exception of OAN, getting in the same page as CNN, MSNBC, and the others, yes, including Bloomberg, to push back on this Pentagon policy. Does that give you hope for the state of the national news media?
Yeah, I think it's very heartening that they have joined together to say that this is absolutely unacceptable. Let's not forget, the Pentagon gets about $1 trillion of U.S. taxpayer money. It sends our young men and women into war. It's happening at a time we're shooting boats in Venezuela, killing people. The president, just hours after he says there's a chance we could have to go in and disarm Hamas. And Pete Hegseth flies off to Europe and says, oh, by the way, you can't enter the building until you agree to abide by these absolutely, insane, really is the way to put it, restrictions on press freedom. So I do think it is very, very heartening. I also think that Pete Hegseth doesn't understand a lot about reporting. Does anybody think reporters are just going to say, oh, okay, no more coverage of the Pentagon? I think we're going to see, Joe, and this is my guess, even better reporting. They're going to talk to their sources, and they're going to be harder on the Pentagon from the outside. So I think he's doing himself a disservice if he's trying to control the narrative.
I do tend to agree with you on what could be enhanced reporting. We're going to end up seeing stories now we would not have seen otherwise because of this challenge by the Pentagon, and we should be more specific. This was a 21-page document that journalists were asked to sign last month. As we report, one of the most concerning elements is a line barring journalists. This is the heart of the policy. Barring journalists from reporting classified and even some unclassified information without the permission of the Pentagon. That's what would change here. You'd have to get essentially the secretary to sign off on your story before it goes out. And the secretary doesn't work for any newsroom. He did used to work, of course, for Fox News, which is, by the way, packing up its bags right now and getting out of the correspondence corridor, as it's called. This goes back to the years just after World War II. The then defense secretary in 1972, Secretary Melvin Laird, renamed the Pentagon hallway Correspondence Corridor and dedicated a memorial to reporters killed while covering U.S. foreign wars. If you walk down the corridor, in fact, they have a memorial set up there invoking the likes of Walter Cronkite, Edward R. Murrow, Andy Rooney, and others. What do you think about this, Rick? You've spent more time in the Pentagon than most civilians due to your career here in Washington, and I know you're very familiar with some of the top brass, or you have been. You've prepared them for confirmation hearings. The press corps is a pretty important element of what happens in that building. What happens now?
Well, as you pointed out, it's going to be a new question on all the confirmation hearings that are coming up. So they better be prepared to defend the the policy being made by the Secretary of War in front of Congress, because this is gonna be an issue. And look, there's always been tension, in reporting at the Pentagon. There are a lot of reasons to keep certain plans and activities confidential. It's not an intelligence agency, so it doesn't have the protections that a lot of intelligence agencies have with the use of the press. And Jeannie's right. I mean, it's the largest single use of taxpayer dollars that the government has. And so how do you manage the push and the pull of the public disclosure of what goes on there with the need for some level of confidentiality on war plans, irrespective of who's tweeting them out on their Signal accounts? And so, long story short, it's an unenforceable policy. The reporters I've talked to, point out not only the point that you made, Joe, but also that there's a bar from even soliciting sensitive information and could get you thrown out of the Pentagon press corps. So, one, you don't know what's sensitive, and two, if you don't solicit, you don't get. You got to ask the questions, and so it's obviously an extreme situation, and I am not surprised that there's been a walkout, because the Pentagon press corps has been heralded as one of the greatest institutions inside and outside of government, and as you point out, people have given their lives for this coverage. So if Pete Hegseth thinks he's going to make some progress here, he better look at revising this policy, because these journalists know what they have and they're not going to lose it.
Yeah, well, that was very well put. We remember what Pete Hegseth had to say to the media briefing following our strikes against Iran, Jeannie. That was a massive, here's what you should be talking about kind of speech, as some reporters were questioning whether Iranian nuclear sites were totally obliterated, as the secretary and as the president had said. But what's going to happen in the Pentagon briefings now? I was talking to producer James about this earlier. Are you going to have one chair with OAN sitting in it? What's the point of even disseminating information?
That's absolutely right. I really hope that we are able to see the pictures of this and get the feed, because it will be very, very good to watch. The reality is Pete Hegseth has missed the mark that Donald Trump understands, and I'm surprised Donald Trump isn't pulling him in. You know the old adage, keep your friends close and your enemies closer? If he really thinks the press corps are his enemies, keep them close like Donald Trump does. He has no trouble answering questions all day long and directing what is happening in terms of the narrative coming out. That is the way Pete Hegseth needs to do it. Apparently, he is feeling like he doesn't have that skill, and so he's going to try to slam the door. And this is going to not work to his advantage. So strategically, politically, and of course, legally and constitutionally, this makes no sense. And the irony is he keeps saying this is because of national security. And yet the only leak, to Rick's point, we've seen this year, or the biggest leak, was from his own Signal chat, where he put a reporter on that Signal chat. So, all of this is befuddling. And I really wish Congress was working and the Senate could call him up soon to answer some questions about this nonsense.
Well, we should note as well, The Atlantic was part of this group here of news agencies packing up bags, refusing to sign this. Boy, maybe they regret saying anything about being added to the Signal chat. That would be like a real-time news feed coming out of the Pentagon at this point. Rick, does this actually have to be altered, or would the next secretary be the one to do this? If Pete Hegseth finds himself surrounded by leakers, and we've got stories on the front page every day and on the terminal about something that he doesn't want us to be talking about, does he let them move back in?
Yeah, they're going to have to arrange something to accommodate everybody. he's made his mark. He's like, I told the press that they can't wander around the halls asking people questions, which is what they've been doing since there was a Pentagon. And so now he's got to sit down with a group and say, okay, what is it that I can do to meet my needs, for confidentiality, which is an issue inside the Pentagon, and make it accessible to you and your First Amendment protections. And there's a deal there to be done. It is the deal administration. Go cut a deal.
That's right.
And
here we go.
I think Donald Trump would appreciate that.
Just yesterday he talked about moving the press corps out of the White House. Just behold that for a minute, because we've heard that story before too. Rick Davis and Jeannie Shantano, Bloomberg Politics contributors, great insights. Thank you for the panel. Maybe this will change. Christopher Smart is on the way in next as we turn to the economy.